I want to start this video with a question, and I mean it because that is going to be more or less the entire point of this video. What is meaning? What is meaning? Is it something that would be nice to have in your life? Or is it something that is more important even than yourself? Welcome to Strip Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we are here for another poetry discussion, which will appear in 3 different playlists here on the channel. Number 1 being the poetry discussion playlist, now cruising towards 800 videos strong. Number 2 being the Emily Dickinson playlist, a playlist of poems dedicated to the greatest poet that ever was. And number 3 being the Dark Academia playlist. This is a poem that should have been in the Dark Academia playlist, perhaps, to begin, because it illustrates something that I think is an optional tenet of Dark Academia. But it is one of those options that does not say yes or no, but it says yes and how much. The poem in question today is Because I Could Not Stop for Death, and it reads as such. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor, and my leisure too, for his civility. We passed the school where children strove at recess, in the ring. We passed the fields of gazing grain. We passed the setting sun, or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer, my gown, my tippet, only tulle. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then, 'tis centuries and yet feel shorter than the day I first surmised the horses' heads were toward eternity. So the actual narrative here is pretty simple. Because I could not stop for death, I was too busy to stop and die. He came for me. I didn't even know what was happening. I was just dead and being paraded around. And then I figured it out. And now, what is there to do? But here's what I want to ask. The first place we go, our narrator goes when he or she, whatever, being toted around, we pass the school where the children strove. The first place we go is that place we use to learn. If we are reading this as a dark academic text, the academia part is very important. The scholarship part is very important. But what happens then? We start at school, but then we go to the fields. Yeah, we go to work. Because we don't get to be that academic forever, do we? Maybe. Maybe that's what this poem is telling us. So, what's going on here, if we are in the mind of a dark academic, if we are in the narration of a dark academic, they are the studies that have preoccupied our speaker until death. Here's something that's very interesting to me. And this is coming to a point, I promise. If you listen to comedians talk, you listen to comedians talk about their favorite comedians, the ones that really got them. A lot of guys today credit Norm Macdonald, the funny Canadian man who made his way to the United States. And a lot of people who are not comedians don't really like Norm Macdonald. A lot of people who I shouldn't say aren't comedians, a lot of people who have a generalized sense of humor. You watch a sitcom and maybe you'll catch a humorous movie, a comedy movie, but you're not in it for the love of humor. You're not in it for the love of comedy. You're not a purist in that way. A lot of those people don't really like Norm Macdonald, but comedians love him. Freddie Mercury. You can read so many interviews with vocalists, and if they ask them who inspired them, it's basically always Freddie Mercury. It's basically always Freddie Mercury. But until that movie came out about Freddie Mercury, people knew Queen roughly. They knew We Are the Champions, We Will Rock You, Another One Bites the Dust. But they couldn't probably name Freddie Mercury. Now, maybe they can. But normal people heard Freddie Mercury's voice and just thought, oh, well, that's neat. But singers, they heard what he was doing and thought, I could never. How do you even? The same way that Norm Macdonald used to make comedians laugh. Sometimes, ironically, by not being funny. It was not being funny when funny was expected. And if you're not funny when funny is expected, if you know when to expect funny, well, that's funny. If you don't hit that note when people think you're going to hit that note, and instead you belt one that's 2 octaves higher, I have no idea singing terms, musical terms, but you hit that note that should be impossible from where your vocal cords were leading you. Oh, a regular person doesn't understand it, but a person who spends their time singing does. Why do I talk about this? Well, Norm Macdonald died as the last joke. Norm Macdonald didn't tell anyone he was sick. Norm Macdonald, in his final years, made a big joke about a German fella you may have heard of, and he said, oh, Hitler died. Hitler died? I didn't even know he was sick. And then, all of a sudden, Norm Macdonald dies, and everyone has to say, I didn't even know he was sick. Norm Macdonald, in that way, sort of a modern-day Mark Twain. Someone who is using the real world as comedy. Freddie Mercury, the rock star. He died in a way that was as rock star as it gets. That's all that's all you can say about it, right? Outside of, I don't even know what, right? So no one knew about his disease until he was gone. No one knew. And it wasn't just, the lifestyle he was leading was absolutely wild. The way that a rock star should live. These are people, one of the questions that I come to time and time again through dark academia is this. Is dark academia a space of transition? That is, you enter dark academia and you buff up your academia at the expense of everything else, hoping to reemerge on the other side as something completely different. Like a caterpillar going into a cocoon and emerging a butterfly. Or is dark academia the stopping point, right? So Norm Macdonald, Freddie Mercury, these were not dark academics, but these were people who had completely sold themselves to their craft. Doing things that people inside the craft had no idea were possible. I think, largely, dark academia is to be used as a cocoon. But anyone who has sold themselves to the academia in that way for that long, even if they come out, when they look back at those folks that never did, that went on to become the mad scientist as opposed to the guy who was just kind of brooding, that went on to become the weird writer, but golly, he wrote absolutely stunning poems as opposed to just published a couple times. The people that come out look at the people who never left the same way that comedians look at Norm Macdonald, the same way that singers look at Freddie Mercury. The same way, in my opinion, that Emily Dickinson should be read by dark academics. Emily Dickinson died a recluse, completely sold to her poetry. Why am I talking about that with this poem? That's where our narrator is. Whatever it is that our narrator is working on, our narrator did not have the time to die. Death had to come and get her. Death had to come and get her. So this is sort of, in a weird way, autobiographical. I don't know that Emily Dickinson ever would have recognized it that way, but maybe she did. Maybe she looked at her life. The big thing that I talk about with this in dark academia is this: how do you know when you're at that point? I think that there's a point where people get lost. I think there's a point after which people are irretrievable. How do you know when you're there? Do you recognize it after you've crossed the precipice? After you've jumped over the river? Do you know you're on the other side? Is this Emily Dickinson telling us, hey man, I'm gone. There's no coming back. Is that what Emily Dickinson is telling us with this poem? That is all I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature's the only thing I talk about on this channel, consider hitting the subscribe button. There are 2 playlists and a video on screen right now that YouTube says you'll love.